Greetings. My name's Guy Dauncey, and this is the show Change the World, where I like to invite guests on who share my vision of a more beautiful future, a better future, something positive and exciting, and not just groaning and complaining, right? And my guest today is Dean Murdock, who has been welcome to the show.
Thank you.
A Saanich councillor for coming up 10 years.
Yeah.
And during that time, you have been also, I'm going to read because your list is so long, a director on the Capital Regional Districts Board, on the Greater Victoria Public Library Board, on the Regional Water Supply Commission. You've chaired Saanich Parks, Trails and Recreation Committee, former chair of the Environment Committee, and you have a daytime job.
I do a real job too, yeah.
And you have a family with children. So and you have not got grey hair yet.
Not yet. It's all real. It's the real thing so far.
Yeah, so you're deciding to now pull out of being a municipal councillor. Looking back on 10 years, what's the highlights for you?
Oh, wow, the highlights. There have been a lot of really great pieces that Saanich has moved forward in the last decade. I think a lot of them are really coming to fruition now. They say the ship of state moves slowly, and as a decade has moved on, I've found really the last term we've really kind of hit a lot of the key strategic pieces that I was interested in. Yeah. Active transportation, sidewalks and bike lanes, yes. A food security strategy, forging relationships with our neighboring First Nations communities. Right. We're renewing our climate action plan. We have 100% renewable energy target. Yeah. There's a lot of really good stuff happening, and I would say, they haven't all been great meetings, but I can look back on 10 years and feel like Saanich is a better place in that time, and I feel good about the direction that it's heading in based on some of those really key strategic documents. Yeah.
Well, that's encouraging, and so few people actually vote in municipal elections. What is it, 35% or something?
Yeah, at best, actually, yeah. So, I think we were at 33% in the last one.
And yet the decisions made in the City Hall or Municipal Hall shape the whole environment we live within, whether there are trees or not, whether there's a place to grow food, whether there's affordable housing, whether you can get to work or not.
Absolutely. I mean, people often ask me, why local government? Why get involved in local government? Yeah. What difference does it make? And my answer is exactly that. I mean, it affects people literally on the street where they live. Yes. It is the most intimate form of government, and it's the most accessible form of government. If you have a concern, there's nothing that would prevent you from showing up in the council chamber and telling your council what's wrong and what they need to do about it. Yeah. And council and municipal government is often responsive. Yes. We recently made a move towards a ban on plastic bags to follow Victoria's example, banning single-use shopping bags. And we haven't seen the provincial government step up in that direction. The federal government shied away. Even on plastic straws, they've shied away. It is the local governments that are really on the cutting edge. The ban on cosmetic pesticides, climate action, this is really the level of government where you see action taking place, and that level of government steps up to represent the interests of residents.
So it's so easy for people to complain. I mean, the pothole in the road, and you want to complain to someone, the bike lane's going and making people feel it's tough to get around, but you have to hang on to the long-term vision of where these things are leading us, right?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, in a lot of cases, it's kind of weathering the storm through those challenging decisions, and change is always difficult. Yeah. Bike lanes, I think, are probably one of the more obvious recent examples of that, where it's a longer-term gain, but does come at the expense of some vehicle lanes. Right. And so, you often get folks locking horns over those kinds of decisions.
How is Saanich's progress on cycling, and is there any separated safe bike lanes as well?
Yeah, so we've installed a number of areas where we've done what we call complete streets, and so there are sections, several kilometers of roadway, major corridors, where you've seen bike lanes and sidewalks go in alongside, protected bike lanes or raised bike lanes go in alongside those vehicle traveling lanes and the pedestrian lanes. We now have a completed Shelburne Valley Action Plan, which is going to see bike lanes take up both sides of the road all the way down Shelburne Street, which is one of our busiest corridors. And we've got a new active transportation plan, which sets out priority areas for cycling and pedestrian infrastructure investment over really the next 30 years with 5-year priority action plans.
So whenever I hear someone complaining about bike lanes going in, I want to say, well, look, everyone on a bicycle is not in a car, first of all. So they're doing a huge public service by not driving a car. And secondly, the finances that I study show that for every dollar invested in a bike lane brings $5 to $6 of public benefit back. Increased health for personally, increased fitness, fewer days taken off work, less stress, and this bizarre thing, more happiness.
Yes.
Cyclists report that they're happier people.
Yeah, I mean, I ride a bike to work. I know you're a regular rider as well. It does make you feel good, you know, among all the other societal benefits, just from a personal perspective.
Maybe it's the closest we get to the being on a horse. You know, you've got the fresh air, you've got the wind,
Well, you know. Robin Williams described it as the closest thing humans get to flying. You know, you feel that wind, and you're setting sail. You're on your way.
We have the dog in the car when the dog wants to put his head out the window and get the wind.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
But the categorical thing is that the bike lanes are safe.
Yes.
Because there's another aspect, which is cycling on roads when the SUV mirrors are swiping you, and then it's dangerous. So
well, and certainly I don't think anybody wants to be put at risk. I mean, there are certainly cyclists who feel comfortable in that roadway.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them. I don't know a lot of people who are. But they're out there. But for the most folks, they'll only get on the bike and commute to work or to school or wherever they need to go if they feel safe in that traveling space. And that's what protected bike lanes are really all about, reaching out to the people who wouldn't otherwise get on a bike to commute.
I grew up cycling on roads with no bike lanes, so I learned to be a fast, aggressive cyclist when you can accelerate fast. But when you look at the video footage of Denmark or Holland, people are just trundling along, having a great time, chattering. They're not hurrying or rushing, and none of them wear helmets because they're all safe, right?
Yes, yeah, that's right. And they're all riding upright, and they're doing at best about 15 or 20 kilometers an hour.
No lycra in view.
No, exactly. No, and what's remarkable about those cities in the world is that they're having congestion issues in the bike lane. They have to multiply the number of bike lanes because they're so popular. Yeah. It would be a nice problem for us to have here in Greater Victoria.
In Copenhagen, where over 40% now cycle to work and for studying, most people are not doing it for environmental reasons. They're doing it, it's the fastest way to get to work.
That's
and it's the most comfortable way to get to work.
Yes.
No hassle with parking the car and stress and all that stuff. It's just easy, right?
Well, and as long as you put those bike lanes, protected bike lanes, in the corridors where people want to travel, they will use them. I mean, they're going to be on the major routes for buses and where the vehicles like to travel as well, because for obvious reason, it gets you closest to where you want to go. Okay. And you don't have to try and find a spot to put the car at the end. Yeah.
Does Saanich have a vision for what kind of, how many cyclists it would like to have? What share of the trips?
Yeah, there are targets in the new active transportation plan. Some of them are quite long-term, so looking to double the number of trips taken on foot, on bike, and on bus. But that's really more of a 20-year vision. Yes. And I think that, to be honest, I don't know that that's aggressive enough or ambitious enough. I have a sense that we're actually going to see that happen much more quickly. As roads become more congested, as fuel prices become more costly, I suspect if you make it convenient for people, they will make the switch.
Holland is up to a huge number of cyclists, and people say, well, Holland's flat.
Yes.
And I say, well, have you tried an electric bike?
Yes,
because you come to a hill, switch on the electric drive, and you sail up that hill with no ache in your legs.
That's right, yes. And we have a lot of corridors that are, I mean, they certainly go up and down, but they're not some of those major peaks. It's not asking people to ride up Mount Doug. Yeah. And that's why Shelburne is such an obvious route, because for the most part, it's a flat traveling surface.
So switching gear.
Yes.
The housing crisis.
Yes.
And now you've got your first tent city in Saanich.
Yes.
What is Saanich doing to handle this explosion of housing prices, explosion of rents, low rental vacancy rate, increasing number of people who've already got mental problems, can't find anywhere? It's a real crisis on our hands.
It is, yeah. And I think that we've seen the real estate market get away from us a lot faster than anyone could have predicted, which has put housing far out of reach for most people, especially first-time home buyers. It's way outside of their reach, which means obviously rental becomes the most obvious solution.
And then the rental prices go up.
And the rental prices keep rising. So more affordable rental, subsidized rental, and obviously housing provided by BC Housing and CRD Housing. Those are solutions that will take time as construction is slow to begin. The other thing is, as we see more rental market come on stream, it does free up spaces that would be more affordably priced as people choose to get into those somewhat higher end units.
So Victoria, which is what, 70,000 people? And you're 100,000, right?
114,000.
114. So in Victoria, a report recently said they need 6,000 new affordable housing units, like yesterday. So the equivalent for Saanich might be 8,000.
I think that may well be the case. I mean, we regularly hear from folks that they want to be close to major centers, they want to be on good transit routes, close to services, like we all would.
Well, the flip side, if you are forced to live way out in land where it's cheaper, you now got a commuter hour into work. You're filling up the roads, which is another huge headache for us all. And that 2 hours a day is time not with your children.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's finding those ways to try and make it as convenient for folks as possible. Certainly, Saanich does have affordable housing in the community. There's more coming. And the CRD now has a considerable pot of funds, $90 million to invest in housing. It will take time for those units to start to appear. We're looking for opportunities to site them in locations where it's going to make sense for people to be located. But of course, when you see the kinds of housing crisis that we're in at the moment, it can't come fast enough. We're doing some smaller pieces as well. We're looking at garden suites at the moment to increase the availability of rental. There was a recent discussion at Monday night's council meeting where we looked at ways that we may be able to make it more accessible for people to bring their existing suites into compliance so that they wouldn't run the risk that they might be shut down or they'd be unsafe.
So if I throw you the idea that we should allow every house to have a secondary suite or a garden suite, a full amnesty for anyone that's not in compliance, and a 10-year municipal tax break on the increase of value that the suite causes. Because the municipality wouldn't be getting the extra tax value without the suite, so why not give it a tax break as an incentive to people to do the suite? What do you think?
You know, I think it's a great idea. For me, I think the most important thing is making sure that those are safe places.
They've got to be building code. They've got to be building code.
Exactly.
Yes, obviously.
So that's the trick with the amnesty, saying suddenly now that's a legal suite. We'd want to make sure that it did at least achieve a minimum standard so that people were safe. But I agree with you. I think we do need to make it easier for people to legalize, to come into compliance, and to ensure that those places remain available. We don't want to put at risk the idea that you would have to be, or we don't want to create the chance that people might suddenly find themselves evicted from a space because it wasn't a legal dwelling. So absolutely.
But you could give people a year to get into compliance if the building code, if your building inspectors can work fast enough, right?
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to be moving towards thousands of suites coming online in a short amount of time, it would take a considerable number of inspectors to make sure that those were all safe.
I had a colleague move from Vancouver to Duncan recently, and she was excited to rent a 3-bedroom home for a family at $2,500 a month rent. And I thought, who can pay $2,500 a month rent?
I know.
And I shake my head in. I'm fortunate enough to be of the generation that you could get into a mortgage earlier, and then you added a bit of it. I'm also fortunate because I had parents who owned a house, so I got a small inheritance. A third of the population doesn't have parents who own property. They'll never get an inheritance. They'll never get the down payment even. So they're
increasingly out of reach, and so
it's so stressful financially.
And so, in order to keep that dream of home ownership alive, I think we do need to look at permitting additional dwellings for rental, those mortgage helpers, to allow people to even qualify for a mortgage.
What about some of the areas where there's single-family housing, where what Todd Littman calls the middle housing, which is not great big condo towers, but 3-story, 2-story duplexes, triplexes. in some of the single-family areas.
Yes. I think we're starting to see that happen. In a lot of cases, it's happened outside of what's permitted under the zoning or the bylaw. But I think that makes sense. I mean, people have said to me, these giant 5 and 6 bedroom homes, what family is going to move in there in the future? And I think that's exactly
Actually, I'll tell you what does move it. In Britain, the old aristocratic mansions are perfect for setting up a commune in.
Yes. Well, yes, exactly.
20 people move in and share living together.
And I think, if you're not going to turn it into multiple units, that is another thing that would be entirely possible. I think, we need to make sure that we're remaining flexible to the changes in our housing market when people really are desperately looking for places to live.
So people want a place where they can cycle to it easily, they have an affordable house, and they want to grow food.
Yes.
So what's Saanich has been doing under your watch to help people with more urban farming?
Well, it's a great question, and I'm a big believer in making sure that people can grow for themselves. If there's available land where people could use that people can use to grow vegetables, produce, I think we should be taking advantage of that. Boulevard gardens, backyard gardens, community gardens, using those spaces that we would otherwise be fertilizing and using the lawnmower to trim. To start producing food.
In Vancouver, when you walk around some of the boulevards, you see gardens, wonderfully, both vegetables and flowers. And I tell you what, as well as the food, you feel a sense of love that the homeowners extended onto the public space.
Yes.
And you get a nice warm feeling.
Absolutely.
Instead of, well, it's public, it's let the dandelion, it feels neglected because it's just not our job.
Or in other cases where it's covered in gravel and used for parking.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that those are growing spaces that we could be taking advantage of that are otherwise going to waste.
Yeah.
And would be producing food for a family or several families on that street to enjoy.
Yeah.
I think increasingly there's a demand from folks to have that opportunity to move past sort of the more conventional view of a gentrified neighborhood where you've got those mowed green lawns and use those spaces for growing.
Yeah.
And neighbors sharing that, somebody has various kind of crop that they're growing, there are apple trees in a neighbor's yard, using that more communal approach to produce.
Yeah, some of the stuff I've seen coming out of Portland where the company City, I've forgotten his name, Mark Lakeman, where neighbors in suburban areas are getting together and painting the whole intersection and putting up little places where you can sit and have a coffee together, or a little miniature library standing thing, and really bringing the neighborhoods to build community.
Yes, a little parklet.
Do you think that, well, let me tell you a story. When my wife and I organized a street party in Oak Bay a long time ago, and we knocked on one neighbor's door, and she said, oh, well, she's a retired teacher. She told this story that she'd seen a furniture van across the road. She'd gone over and she said, welcome to the neighborhood. And they'd said, that's very kind of you, but actually we've been living here 7 years and we're just moving out. So to me, the horrendous thing of neighborhood disconnection, which is an offense to all human instinct for community.
Yes.
Do you believe there's more sense of community growing through neighborhood associations, community associations?
I think that there's an opportunity for that to occur. I don't know that that's happening already, but I agree with the way you introduced the concept of getting people together around a project. And that's often how that social connectedness emerges. Yeah. People working hand in hand to try and achieve something together. Yeah. Giving them a purpose that there's something they can be proud of, a space that can be celebrated within the neighborhood. Yeah. And the value of social connectedness.
Because once you've met someone, and you've done the face-to-face thing, you're always going to say, hi there, how's it going?
Absolutely.
If you've never met them, you can walk straight past and...
For 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah. Well, and even from a human health perspective, social isolation has incredibly detrimental effects on your health. Yeah. And so just making that regular connection with your neighbors, the chance to say hello, ask about the family, invite them over for coffee, that's hugely beneficial for health outcomes. And it comes at a minimal price. It's really just getting together.
Well, getting onto the health outcome thing, it's not necessarily a municipal function, but with the welfare state and the healthcare system, we end up depending on someone to come and sort our problems out for us.
Yes.
And I've been reading about stuff happening in Britain where the health system is really crumbling and crunching because the staff are just so struggling to do this. But when you have neighbors help themselves, by getting into connection, someone comes in and fixes a thing that's broken, and someone else comes in, someone's just come out of hospital, they want someone to come and look after them. But the neighbors do it themselves.
Yes.
then you're empowering people to act in a way that, frankly, we've always done in community before this idea that the state will look after us.
Well, and it really enables that concept of aging in place.
Yes.
And I think that it allows people to be a part of their community for much longer,
Yeah, if
and
you've got
probably go on to live much longer, healthier lives as a consequence.
So if you've got 10 friends and neighbours who can look in on looking after you while you're 85, 90 years old, it's
Yes.
it's better to, you can age in place in your own home,
Yes.
which everyone wants to do, and not be having to go into a facility.
And they say this about the heat waves that went on in Ontario and
Yes.
Quebec over the last few weeks. Check on your neighbors, knock on the door, make sure that people are okay. Because often it's those
Yeah.
folks who become socially isolated who succumb to the heat wave.
Well, people are so nervous about knocking on a neighbour's door, they haven't met them before.
Yes.
Once you've met them, no problem.
Yeah.
And how's your cat doing?
That's
And
exactly right.
did the cat have kittens yet? All that
Those
stuff.
bonds that we, as you pointed out, are natural to us to try and create, reaching out to our fellow humans to create those kinds of relationships.
So let's go from the micro level at the community to the macro level of the climate crisis,
Yes.
which is going to whack us all something horrendous with increasing heat waves and floods and stuff. And you have a climate action plan and a commitment to 100% renewable energy. By when? What does it look like? What does that mean on practice?
So Saanich at this point has endorsed the 100% renewable target, and we're looking at 2050. But the plan is still coming together. It's in consultation.
Okay.
And we've got a terrific sustainability coordinator, Rebecca Newlove,
Yes.
who's leading the charge on that front. Canvassing community, canvassing experts on ideas that will help get us to that place as
Right.
we do two things: renew our climate action plan, which is now 10
Yes.
years old,
Right.
and develop a strategy that's going to get us to a 100% renewable energy economy.
And that's fundamentally about the way we our transportation to stop burning oil,
Yes.
and our buildings to stop burning oil and gas, and then solid waste to stop having landfill emissions and stuff like that, is it?
I think all of those things will be part and parcel. So it's partly our corporate emissions, the way that we
Yes.
fuel our fleet, the
That's
way
just a
we
small-
power power and heat our buildings.
Yes.
And then stepping out into the community and looking at those same things, looking at retrofit opportunities where we may allow buildings to become passive, where they're generating their own energy, where they're using their own wastewater or water runoff within the building.
Well, the new passive house standard that being built in Victoria, it's so efficient. There's no heat source at all apart from one little heat recovery ventilator. So you've got no heating bills.
Yes. No, I mean, if you're able to make that initial investment, it comes with a much larger long-term payoff. And I think that it's looking at ways to help make that possible.
Well, it's only,
for people.
according to the couple in Victoria who've been done it, the father and son, it's only a 4 or 5% extra cost. And then that extra capital with no heating bills, the finances come out even.
Yeah, and you know, I think we've got a lot of existing housing stock that's at a point where it is going through renewal.
Needs
and
retrofit,
so they're either looking at ways to retrofit those spaces or create new spaces that may take their place. Obviously, from an environmental perspective, I'd far rather see people retrofit and renovate their homes so that they achieve a new energy standard rather than knocking those sites down and building a new building, because it would eventually become more energy efficient.
So in your 10 years, you must have sat on endless committees and endless stuff that's really boring and some. But what are the joyful moments? What are the joyful, exciting moments that come to mind when you think back over it?
You know, I think it's when people show up who have been, there's been an issue in their community, in their neighborhood that has impacted them in a negative way. It's often about traffic, it's about noise, there's an issue in the neighborhood, and when you're able to work with them to help find solutions, connect them with staff, connect them with neighbors, even provide them with some folks in the community who may have some expertise in order to help.
Right.
Those are the moments that are the most powerful, where you feel like you're actually making a positive difference.
Right.
And I'd say that's the most rewarding part of the job. The bigger pieces, the strategic pieces we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, those are hugely rewarding.
But if you don't
well.
have the strategic piece, you're just fixing potholes all the time.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, you're really looking at stopgap solutions in order to help people's immediate problem.
Yes.
It's the larger strategic pieces that, of course, set us up for longer-term success.
Yes.
And those bring me a lot of joy as well. One of the pieces that I have been trying to inch forward is a farmland trust for the region. Setting up a fund where the municipality or the region would be positioned to purchase vulnerable farm properties.
Right.
And once it's built up an inventory, those properties would become available for lease, affordable lease to new farmers.
Of which there are so many.
Well, there's no shortage of new farmers.
Yes.
There's a shortage of accessible land.
Absolutely,
the cost of trying to get onto a farm has become prohibitive.
And you've got Halliburton Farm, which is a great example.
A terrific example. And it's one where I think if we can build on that, Saanich, of course, has acquired Panama Flats, which is another opportunity. If we're able to put those pieces into active food production, I think that there's a huge benefit to the community in terms of available food. There's a greenhouse gas emission benefit because the more we produce and consume locally, the less we're going to import from farther parts of the world. And it's great for the local economy because we're going to be supporting local food producers.
So this October, there's going to be people putting their names forward to run for council for the first time.
Yes.
What advice would you give to them when they're considering, could I be a councillor?
Are you sure you want to do this? No, I think what I would probably say is don't underestimate the commitment involved in the work.
Yeah.
You know, there are some great moments that seem like they came in a flash. But there's often years of legwork involved in making those things happen. So don't expect things to come quickly.
Okay.
Be prepared to have to work your network, to talk to as many people as possible to try and bring things together. And be patient. If it's not going to come around the first time, then you've got to persevere and keep trying. And that's true for people who decide to run and aren't successful the first time.
Right, yes.
You've got to persevere. There's a huge incumbent advantage in local elections. And you may well not find yourself elected the first time out. And I think that, you know, for a first time out, it's important to be familiar with the municipal process. It's not like provincial or federal government. Things do work quite differently at the local level, and understanding the steps involved to say rezone a piece of property or bring forward a new strategic plan, how budgets are developed, all of those pieces are important to know something about before you get involved.
And so you've got to wrap up. What's next for you? You take a holiday, but you must be brewing, or is it?
You know, I'm open to new opportunities, but I'm most excited about having evenings and weekends with my kids.
And you have a full-time job.
I do.
In the Ministry of Health.
Yeah, I work for the Ministry of Health. This is why my interest in human health outcomes in our conversation. So I'll continue with the ministry, and I have a great job as the manager of Healthy Communities, which is an area that's obviously near and dear to my heart.
Yes, right.
So I'll continue doing that. You'll still see me actively involved in the community. I probably won't be showing up in the council chamber, but I'll be involved in this community.
And your children will see more of you.
I'm looking forward to more bedtime stories and going to soccer games and dance classes. They're 6 and 8.
Oh, right.
And so the demands on my time from them are growing, and I look forward to being available to be part of those activities.
I grew up in the era when fathers were distant and absent, and when I see fathers with their kids on the soccer field, I get a warm feeling of love and jealousy mixed together. I think that is so good that the parents are engaged with their children. Right?
Absolutely, it's great for the community, it's great for families, and I look forward to having more of a role in that regard.
Well, look, thank you for 10 years of, I know it's a paid job, but it's way more than a paid job. It's volunteering. It's so much effort and endeavor. So thank you for that, indeed.
It's been my pleasure. I'm grateful for the chance to have been able to do it for 3
Good luck
terms.
with the last 5 months before you get your time off, right?
Thanks
so
very much.
My name is Guy Dauncey. This has been the show called Change the World. One of my small contributions is this novel that I wrote set in Vancouver in the year 2032 called Journey to the Future, when all of these wonderful ideas come together in an imaginary, ecotopian, visionary world to give us hope and courage that we can really build an amazing future. Thanks for watching. If you want more like this, tune in next week. Thanks.